year's District Road Race Championships, we had a separate 65 plus category. This year, we're combined with the 60s and the 70s. Hey cycling community, this is Steve Grusis, the Cycling Greek. This combination presented a couple challenges to me. One was much bigger than the other. In my older years recently, I've had trouble with sustained, fast, flatland power. And it promised to be fast because of who signed up for the 60 plus. It was like a who's who in our district. The 70 plus had it worse. They only had 2 riders in their group. One got dropped 1 mile into the race, and the other one got dropped 5 miles into the race. Pretty much one was chasing the other, and the other was trying to stay away for the entire 54-mile race. That all being said, because of the racing situation here in Northern California and the numbers presented, there wasn't really a lot that the promoter could do. Along with the 270 pluses, there were 7 65 pluses. That was my group. And the rest of them, 19 I believe, 18, were 60 pluses. Regardless of my stated weakness, this race was not a surprise, obviously. I knew this was going to be the format. I've been working on improving in that area, and now the question is, have I improved enough to be able to hang on with these guys to the end? And again, referencing that stated weakness, Velo King's Jeff Quall, who I believe is the current Crits district champion, went to the front and is lining everyone out. He's one of those strong who's who in the 60 plus. We have a crosswind going from right to left, and so I'm trying to stay on the correct side of his wheel, and I'm thinking, you know, I can feel this right now, and this is just the beginning. About 4 minutes later, we take that left turn, and he finally pulls off. I'm guessing he was just warming his legs up. But when he pulls off, I'm in the front, and I'm thinking, you know, I'm not going to be here. I'm old. Time for me to get off the front and execute my plan. What's my plan? Last as long as I can with the pack by being in good position and sucking wheel. Let's talk about positioning. That doesn't mean tail gunning it at the back, not knowing what's going on in the front, and subject to outputting lots of power because of surges that you weren't able to see earlier. I figured that doing that plan was my best chance to stay with the group as long as possible. This 54-mile race was made up of 3 17-mile loops and a 3-mile promenade. It was mostly flat. It had some climbs in it, including 2 stinger hills coming into the finish, and there was a big descent. We are approaching what used to be a 1-mile section of gravel. So glad it's paved over. We're turning onto that section now. Now there are what they call some soft spots. These are depressions where the asphalt didn't solidify and it sunk into the gravel. You just passed one right there. So we had to be careful not to go over that. Sometimes you did, sometimes it wasn't that bad. People did what they did last year when there was gravel here. As soon as you turn left, you just lay down the watts, especially those in the front. You want to create a split. That was easier to do with gravel. Not now, not with this asphalt, and not with the tailwind. I stated earlier that the gold gravel section was about a mile. It was more like a mile and a half, and at the end of that mile and a half, we had this little climb. You had to pay attention and put down some watts, but this was nowhere near as hard as being on the end of a 1.5 mile gravel section. We are back to the start-finish end of the course as we're about to complete our first lap. We're going over the first of 2 small hills leading into the finish. We are back to left to right crosswinds. I'm hugging the right side. In fact, sometimes I'm riding on the white line or in the dirt to move up. I've spoken about all the big names that are in the 60 plus, but the person behind me in the orange and yellow jersey, that is the current 65 plus mountain bike champion, national champion. I also have to contend with Cat 2 Kevin Willits, and he has a couple teammates. Setting aside that my big goal is not wanting to get dropped, I figured this first lap would be uneventful, at least in terms of breakaway attempts. Based on who pre-reg for this race, I figured that would happen in the second lap. But 3 of those very strong riders didn't show up today. If I correctly heard the scuttlebutt in the peloton during that first lap, the reasons for their not showing up ranged from the reappearance of long COVID to a bike falling off the roof rack coming home from the race the day before. I'm not saying that their not being there negated the possibility of a breakaway in the second lap, it just decreased the possibility. There are riders in the 60 plus that I remember seeing featured in YouTube videos back in the day in the P12 races. As it turned out, there were no breakaway attempts during the second lap, at least none that I saw, and because I'm at positioning, I was seeing most everything. Certain sections got faster, the climbs got faster. Let's go back to positioning for the moment. One of my many memories of this race is that I got yelled at 4 times. probably for a good cause. As we started the third lap, I was pleasantly surprised that I was still with the group. Everybody was becoming on edge. I was always looking at improving my position, especially when you can lose your position so easily because everything can stack up, and we were only allowed one lane on this race. I had been taught the art of moving up in the middle of a tight pack back when I was a domestique on my Palace Indian gaming days at the turn of the century. And I was taught that by my team director, who, by the way, is our moto official for our particular race. Still, there's a fine line between being assertive and being aggressive. While I want to be able to stay with the pack, I certainly don't want to cause any crashes. We are about 2 kilometers from the finish. My positioning is not great. Why? Well, because my handlebar camera died and I was having trouble with my helmet cam. I obviously got it going. It is what it is. Still, there's plenty of time for something to happen for me. At least that's what I'm telling myself. I'm connected with the group and we're starting to go up this first climb. As the speed picks up, it looks like I'm losing positions. Well, I am losing positions because this is getting pretty hard and I'm starting to lose contact. During the crunch times of this last lap, my choices on how to stay connected basically came down to 2 choices: spin maniacally or use a lot of muscle power. In this particular case, I spun maniacally. That puts pressure on my aerobic system, which I can do more often and recover quicker from. I have to avoid using big muscle power at this late stage in the race. I'm probably good for doing that just one more time. As you can see, I made it back onto the group. And as you can see, I am toward the back of the pack. When you look up ahead, you'll see the road coming up. And that's going to be the last kicker hill, and that leads right to the finish. You'll probably notice that the left side of the lane is free. Remember that left to right crosswind. Now, if I had a teammate and I was leading him out or putting him in a position to get toward the front, I would go off to the left, have him on my right, and I would pull him toward the front. If I was to do that right now on my own, I could probably get close to the front, but then as soon as I did, I'd be off the back because that would suck all the energy out of me. I just wouldn't have any power left. Here's what could be a yellable situation. So you notice number 642. And the rider in front of him is from Penn Bellow, 647. I'm guessing 647 is having trouble with the pace on this climb. He's looking to get on that rider with the black kit's wheel. As he starts his move, he comes over on the Body Concepts rider, who then goes into Velo King's Brian Patterson. I am in the back. I slow up a bit just to miss that wheel. I come around, and now I have an open lane, but no power. You make the call on this. This was crunch time coming into the finish. Was the side-to-side movement too much? Or is this just bike racing in the last kilometer? Back to the climb. While the last climb that we did, that Stinger Hill, was a true Stinger Hill, this one is long, dragging at about 2%. And there I start to lose contact. We've already had a couple of riders back there losing contact, including Velo King's Brian Patterson. I point him out because he's in the 65s in my category, and he's going to be very important to the story that's coming up. We are at the top of the climb. It's 1 kilometer to go. I am disconnected. The pack seems so close, but I am redlined. Fortunately, I recover quickly, but not totally recover. I'm trying to go as fast as I can, but those guys are going faster. So I know I'm not going to catch them. All I'm thinking about now is Brian that's behind me. Brian has a lot of endurance and he's strong on the flats. Fortunately for me, for today, he's not very good at climbing. More specifically, not climbing at speed. That gave me a lot of distance for once I went over the top. He's chasing me. I know he's chasing me. He knows I know he's chasing me. Did you know that kilometers are over half a mile? Right now, I gotta say, they seem pretty damn long. Pretty much, I'm on the edge this whole way. On the edge with not a lot of power. In the back of my mind, there's this nagging temptation just to ease off just a bit, just so it won't hurt. I remember there was a 200 meter to go sign, but I don't remember seeing it yet. It's probably something like 10 miles away. Wait, what's that in the distance? I thought that during this last kilometer I had turned back at least once to see where Brian was. When I'm doing the playback on the video, putting this video together, it looks like I didn't. I can see that Brian's getting closer. I can remember standing up and sprinting, and I may be sprinting right now, but I couldn't sprint all the way to the line, and I remember sitting down and just spinning as fast as I could. Good Lord, if that climb topped out at 1.5 km, he would have caught me.
Got this.